моя рідня. І я можу бути тут. Надіюсь на краще, ну хоча б поховати рідних.
Дуже дякую.
It is the stuff of your worst nightmares. Once sleepy towns across Ukraine have been blasted into muddy hellscapes by Putin's onslaught. The bombing in many areas has been so intense, bodies have been left under the rubble for over a month. Only now, after Russian troops have withdrawn, can rescuers get to them. And as they do, evidence of possible war crimes is mounting. Russia has vehemently denied abusing the Ukrainian population and called accusations of war crimes a monstrous forgery. But in the areas recently liberated from Russian forces, civilians have started to emerge with their horrific testimonies of torture, summary executions, mass graves, rape and disappearances. In Trostyanets, which lies just a few kilometers from the border with Russia and was occupied by Moscow's forces for a month, the full horror of what happened there is only now coming to light.
It's clear that there was quite a fierce battle that took place here at the train station in Trostyanets. You can see behind me that these destroyed trains, all the windows are also barricaded up with ammunition boxes, and on the other side of the main building of the train station, it's basically just a muddy, cratered, apocalyptic moonscape. But what's even more dark about this location is we've been talking to civilians who told us that underneath the train station, several people were held and tortured for at least 10 days. We spoke to one man who told us about his experiences.
This is Andre. We've been asked to protect his identity. The 33-year-old was detained by Russian soldiers after leaving home to get supplies. He says he was taken from the street, bound, blindfolded, beaten, subjected to electric shocks, and threatened with rape and genital mutilation by Russian soldiers.
Ти якийсь боєць, ти збираєш інформацію, я не являюся воєнним, і я цивільний, я простий цивільний, я кажу, я нічого не знаю, на це вони мені кажуть, що зняли штани там і кажуть, що будуть зараз відрізати мої статеві органи та пхати мені до рота, ще хотіли мене гвалтувати, я забув сказати, що це було, він каже, ми ще тебе зараз переділаємо.
He takes us to the room under the railway terminal where he and 7 others were held and tortured for days. The walls are still smeared with their blood.
Я отак от стояв, і отак от це все головою, мені спочатку здалося, що більше було, але так.
So this is your blood?
My blood, only my blood.
So after you were beaten, you wiped it on the wall?
Так, мені поморочився голова, я отак от стояв, і оце отак от стояв.
Fellow survivor Dima tells us one of the 8 men held was actually beaten to death in front of them. The whereabouts of 2 others are unknown.
Да, постоянно побои, постоянные унижения. Укропы умирайте, укропы подохніть, укропи все, короче. Приходили, казали, що вже захватили всю Україну, що вже президент Зеленський утік з України, потім що ще такого. Естественно, постоянно били, постоянно.
Their story is just one of the horrific crimes committed here since President Putin launched his invasion of Ukraine on the 24th of February.
Incredibly, the police force here in Trostyanets actually stayed put during the entire time that the Russian forces occupied this town. When the Russians left, they found the first body that had bound hands and showed signs of torture, they said. They told me that actually it was discovered right here in this garage. They showed me pictures of the body, and it's very clear that this man had been shot in the head but also very badly beaten.
One of the officers who is investigating the deaths told us the corpse is among at least 5 bearing the signs of torture that they have found so far. One was uncovered just the day before we visited the town.
Виявлення видно, що дані особи були вбиті з огнестрільної зброї, яка безпосередньо або в серці, або в голову. Такі факти маються. І вони ще не останні. Тому що тіла виявляються практично кожен день.
Corpses found bound, shot and tortured is now a disturbingly familiar occurrence in Ukraine. Ukrainian officials say they're investigating some 7,600 potential war crimes and at least 500 suspects. Meanwhile, the International Criminal Court's chief prosecutor has joined an EU investigation into possible international crimes committed in the country. In the Kyiv region alone, Ukrainian police say they've uncovered the bodies of more than 900 civilians. Most of them have been fatally shot, which the Ukrainians say suggests that summary executions were prolific.
Well, right now we're on our way to Bucha, which is about 25 kilometers west of the center of Kyiv. Here, Ukrainian officials say 300 civilians at least have been killed. Human rights organizations have said that possible war crimes were committed here as well by Russian forces who occupied this entire area for several weeks.
It's a grim drive through bombed-out streets, and a miracle people stayed put and survived. On one destroyed road, we meet a 15-year-old boy who, together with his father, narrowly escaped being summarily executed. The only reason they survived is because a Russian commander intervened at the last second.
Було страшно, але я не показував свій страх перед росіянами, тому що мені було дуже стидно, дуже соромно. Після цього один із них сказав: старих в розход, малого оставляєм. Але головний сказав: троїх оставляєм, ані работали, і сказав лежати на землі так годину.
Roman was lucky, others were not. He says his uncle was killed trying to get supplies and several neighbours were also shot. In fact, across Bucha, communal gardens have been turned into makeshift graves for those killed by the occupying Russian forces. At one of those grave sites, we heard about a resident called Alexander who was publicly shot for allegedly filming out of his window. Alexei, a fellow resident, says Alexander's body was left for 2 days and was nearly eaten by dogs until his neighbours plucked up the courage to ask the soldiers to cover him with soil.
Значит, в нашем доме есть 3 погибших, трое мужчин. 2 из них с этого подъезда и Александр с первого подъезда. Значит, с этого подъезда мужчина погиб в боях. Он был, отсюда уехал, воевал и там погиб.
Alexei also shows us how the Russian soldiers systematically looted every single flat. Bucha has witnessed killings on such a large scale that mass graves had to be dug. Local priest Father Andrei isn't sure how many bodies he buried. He stopped counting at 100.
Було багато вбитих людей, морг не вміщав вбитих людей, і тим більше морг не працював, не було світла, тобто не працювали холодильники. Крім цього, багато людей лежало на вулицях, розстріляні, бо люди намагалися машинами евакуюватися, чи просто кудись йшли, там, скажімо, за продуктами, їх розстрілювали, люди лежали на вулиці, їх могли нищити тварини, і щоб по-людськи їх похоронити, прийняли рішення в місце єдине, яке було недалеко від моргу.
This grave has now been exhumed and the long process of identification has begun. Bodies are still being unearthed every day. On our way back to the capital, we came across soldiers who had just made a gruesome discovery. These emotional and physical scars are something the population of Trostyanets is also having to come to terms with. Andrei still cannot feel his hands and has wounds on his legs. Dima says he still has nightmares about his experience.
Таке навіть вспоминати дуже не хочеться. Я хочу просто, щоб більше це не повторилося ні з ким. Взагалі.